From the very beginning of human history, the story of our origins has been told and retold yet too often. It has been filtered through the lens of power, leaving truths buried beneath layers of misinterpretation. What if the very foundations of what we think we know about humanity were incomplete? In this discussion, we explore a perspective that challenges long-held assumptions, that all humans originated from a single being, and that the first human was black. This is not about division or superiority, it is about uncovering truths that history has too often obscured. Truths that reconnect us with the essence of who we are. Imagine looking at the world through a lens that acknowledges the black man as the root of human diversity, the source from which all life spreads. It is a concept that science, anthropology, and scripture alike hint at, yet society has largely ignored or erased. Understanding this is more than a lesson in history, it is a reclamation of identity, a call to recognize the inherent value and dignity that belongs to every individual, and especially to those whose stories have been silenced for centuries. As we dive deeper into this conversation, we will explore not only the historical and spiritual dimensions of this truth, but also what it means for today's world, how embracing our origins can empower communities, reshape narratives, and inspire action. If you are ready to challenge what you think you know, to uncover hidden truths, and to see humanity in a whole new light, then join us on this journey. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more insightful discussions that celebrate truth, identity, and empowerment. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode, and let us begin this exploration together. As we journey further into the origins of humanity, a profound truth emerges that has been overlooked, dismissed, or intentionally obscured for centuries. Black people represent the original blueprint of human life, carrying within them the full spectrum of human diversity. This is not merely a symbolic notion, nor is it a claim rooted in superiority. It is a recognition of an essential reality that science, scripture, and anthropology have long pointed toward, but which mainstream narratives have largely refused to embrace. When we look at the earliest evidence of human existence, we see that the first humans, those whose nature and essence gave rise to all others, were of African descent. Every shade of human life that exists today flows from that origin, meaning that in every individual, regardless of skin color, there is a trace of that first human lineage. To understand this is to understand the interconnectedness of humanity, and yet society has repeatedly chosen to obscure it, crafting myths and hierarchies that serve to diminish the very people from whom we all descend. This denial is not merely an oversight. It is a reflection of systemic structures built upon deception and control, designed to rewrite history and obscure the contributions and identity of black people. In classrooms, textbooks, and popular culture, the narrative often frames the story of humanity as if it began elsewhere, as if the black experience is peripheral rather than foundational. Yet when we examine the evidence closely, the patterns are undeniable. Archaeology, genetics, and historical scholarship all point to Africa as the cradle of humanity, the wellspring from which the diversity of life emerged. Despite this, societal forces have consistently resisted acknowledging this truth, fearing that recognition would challenge long-held myths of racial hierarchy and disrupt the systems of power built on centuries of oppression. The implications of this erasure ripple far beyond historical curiosity. They shape the lived experiences of black people today. Being denied acknowledgement of one's foundational role in human history is not simply a matter of pride, it is a form of marginalization that seeps into culture, education, law, and everyday interactions. The struggle is not merely external. It is internal as well, a challenge to reclaim identity, confidence, and self-worth in a world that has repeatedly attempted to paint an entire people as secondary or derivative. Yet, within that struggle lies resilience. The very fact that black communities have endured, created, and thrived in the face of systemic erasure demonstrates an inherent strength that mirrors the original creative force from which humanity sprung. Every cultural contribution, every scientific insight, every artistic expression is an echo of that origin, a testament to a lineage that cannot be erased no matter how diligently some have tried. To recognize Black people as the original blueprint of humanity is to see the full scope of human potential, to acknowledge that every individual, every culture, and every nation is connected to this source. It is to understand that the richness of human diversity, our languages, our skins, our abilities, our innovations is not a matter of chance, but the unfolding of a single origin that branched out into countless forms. This recognition is transformative, not only in how we view history, but in how we view ourselves and each other. It calls for a recalibration of respect, for an acknowledgement that the oppression, exclusion, and misrepresentation of Black people are not mere accidents of history, but deliberate distortions of truth. By confronting these systemic lies and embracing the reality of our shared beginnings, we can begin to dismantle narratives that perpetuate inequality, and in doing so, cultivate a deeper appreciation for the richness of human life that flows from its true origin. As we continue to trace the origins of humanity and uncover the truths long hidden by systemic distortions, another profound revelation comes into focus. Within every individual resides a spark of the divine, an essence that connects us not only to each other, but to the very source of life itself. This is not a metaphorical claim, but a recognition of a fundamental reality, one that transcends race, nationality, and circumstance, affirming that every human being carries within them a sacred potential. When we begin to see ourselves and others through this lens, the way we interact with the world changes, shifting from a framework of competition, judgment, and hierarchy to one of respect, responsibility, and ethical accountability. The acknowledgement of the God within each person becomes a guiding principle, shaping our thoughts, our decisions, and the ways we nurture or harm those around us, compelling us to honor the inherent worth of every life as a reflection of a greater creative force. This understanding challenges the deeply ingrained narratives that have justified oppression, inequality, and the devaluation of Black life throughout history. If all humans carry the same divine essence, then any attempt to diminish or control a group of people becomes not only morally indefensible, but fundamentally at odds with the truth of our shared humanity. Recognizing this essence invites a profound empathy, urging us to see beyond external appearances, social labels, and the fabricated hierarchies that have divided communities for generations. It is a call to internal reflection as well, asking each individual to confront their own biases, assumptions, and participation in systems that perpetuate harm, and to embrace actions that foster fairness, understanding, and reconciliation. Moreover, this perspective casts the historical erasure of Black people in an even starker light. When society has denied the origin, contributions, and centrality of Black humanity, it has not only distorted history but obscured the divine connection present in every individual, creating barriers to recognition, dignity, and self-respect. By acknowledging that every human being reflects a divine spark, we confront these barriers, reasserting the inherent value of lives that have been marginalized, silenced, or misrepresented. It is through this lens that the resilience, creativity, and cultural richness of Black communities take on even greater significance, not merely as survival or adaptation, but as manifestations of the sacred essence that has persisted against centuries of systemic oppression. Each act of creation, each pursuit of knowledge, each moment of moral courage becomes an affirmation of the divine within, a testament to the unbroken continuity of humanity's origin and potential. In embracing this truth, we cultivate a society that honors the full spectrum of human life, recognizing that justice, compassion, and ethical conduct are not abstract ideals but practical imperatives rooted in the acknowledgement of divinity in every person. It transforms relationships, inspiring collaboration, mutual support, and protection of one another's rights, while fostering an inner discipline that guides individuals toward thoughtful, responsible, and ethical action. Understanding that we are all carriers of this sacred essence reshapes the way we perceive success, power, and influence, prompting a shift from domination and exploitation to stewardship and care. Ultimately, when the God within each person is recognized and respected, it becomes a transformative force, dissolving the false distinctions that have separated humanity, bridging gaps of misunderstanding and prejudice, and opening a path toward a world where every individual is honored, valued, and treated with the reverence that their divine essence commands. In the journey to understand the essence of humanity and the divine spark within every individual, the concept of true manhood emerges not as a symbol of dominance or aggression, but as a profound responsibility rooted in respect, protection, and nurturing. True manhood is measured not by wealth, power, or outward recognition, but by the consistent and selfless commitment to safeguard those who are most vulnerable, to honor life in all its forms, and to invest in the growth and well-being of the next generation. This understanding is inseparable from the recognition of the divine essence that resides in every person, for to see the God within oneself and others is to understand that harming, neglecting, or exploiting another is ultimately a betrayal of that sacred connection. In this light, the actions of a true man are guided by a moral compass that prioritizes care, accountability, and the preservation of life, elevating his purpose beyond personal gain and positioning him as a pillar of strength, guidance, and protection within his community. Throughout history, the distortion of humanity's origins and the systematic oppression of black people have often obscured the virtues of responsibility, respect, and guardianship, casting shadows over what it means to embody authentic manhood. Yet within these struggles, the principles endure, revealing that true strength is not in domination but in the courage to uphold ethical values, to defend those who cannot defend themselves, and to create conditions in which others can flourish. Protecting women and children becomes both a moral imperative and an expression of reverence for life itself, reflecting a profound understanding that nurturing the vulnerable ensures the continuity of culture, knowledge, and wisdom across generations. Every decision a man makes, every action he takes, carries the potential to either uphold or undermine this responsibility, shaping the social and moral fabric of his environment, and influencing the lives of those who will inherit the world he helps to construct. True manhood also entails an intimate relationship with one's own character and integrity, demanding the cultivation of patience, empathy, and humility alongside courage and decisiveness. In honoring life, a man recognizes the interconnectedness of all human experience, understanding that the well-being of women and children is inseparable from the health of families, communities, and society at large. The nurturing of the next generation is not merely a biological responsibility but a sacred duty to instill values, resilience, and awareness, equipping young minds to navigate the complexities of a world historically shaped by inequities, systemic lies, and erasure. In teaching and guiding, men perpetuate knowledge, cultural richness, and ethical frameworks that transcend generations, ensuring that the divine essence within each individual is acknowledged, cultivated, and respected. When these principles are practiced, true manhood becomes a transformative force, a bridge between the past and the future, where protection and respect intersect with moral responsibility and spiritual awareness. It challenges societal distortions that have long devalued Black lives, recasting strength as service, courage as ethical leadership, and power as the ability to create conditions where life is cherished rather than exploited. By embracing this vision, men affirm the sacred worth of all human beings, honoring the God within each person, nurturing life in its most vulnerable forms, and leaving a legacy that strengthens families, communities, and the collective human spirit. True manhood, therefore, is not merely a role to be assumed, but a path of living in alignment with the highest principles of respect, responsibility, and care, reflecting the enduring truth that to protect, nurture, and uplift others is to fulfill the divine potential inherent in every human being. As the story of humanity unfolds through the lens of shared origins and sacred connection, it becomes clear that every individual is more than a solitary existence. We are members of a vast, interwoven family, born from the same divine source and bound by an invisible thread that links each life to the other. To harm another human being, therefore, is not simply an act against a fellow person, but a profound transgression against the essence of God itself, a denial of the sacred reflection that each life carries. This perspective transforms the way we perceive our interactions and responsibilities, casting moral decisions in a light that emphasizes love, unity, and reverence for the inherent divinity within every individual. In a world that has too often perpetuated division, systemic oppression, and historical erasure, the recognition of our shared origin invites a radical reimagining of society, where empathy, respect, and compassion are not optional virtues, but foundational principles that uphold the moral fabric of humanity. Throughout history, the distortion of human relationships and the deliberate devaluation of Black lives have obscured this truth, creating environments in which fear, mistrust, and exploitation take root. Yet the enduring reality remains that no act of injustice can sever the spiritual bond that unites all people. Understanding humanity as a family of the same God compels a sense of accountability that transcends legal or social obligations, insisting that every choice be weighed against its impact on the collective whole, and that every action toward another is, in essence, an act toward the divine. In this framework, protecting the vulnerable, nurturing life, and honoring the God within each person are inseparable from the pursuit of justice and ethical living, reinforcing the interconnectedness of our moral, spiritual, and social responsibilities. This principle challenges the notions of superiority, entitlement, and exploitation that have long distorted societies, demanding a revaluation of what it means to live ethically and authentically. Love, in this sense, is not a mere sentiment but a sacred duty, a conscious commitment to recognize the divine spark within each human being and to act in ways that uplift rather than diminish. Unity, similarly, becomes a practical and spiritual imperative, shaping how communities organize, how leaders govern, and how families nurture future generations, ensuring that the threads of shared humanity remain strong and unbroken. When harm is done to another, it reverberates beyond the individual, touching the divine essence that resides in all, a reminder that the consequences of cruelty, neglect, or indifference extend far beyond immediate perception. Embracing this understanding transforms the very meaning of human interaction, replacing suspicion with trust, enmity with cooperation, and apathy with engagement. It calls on men and women alike to embody virtues of protection, respect, and ethical guidance, to ensure that every child, every family, and every community experiences the recognition of their sacred worth. In seeing each life as a reflection of God or Christ, individuals are inspired to act with courage, integrity, and care, cultivating environments in which love and unity are not abstract ideals but lived realities, where harm is replaced by healing, division by connection, and fear by compassion. This vision of humanity as a family united under the same God offers not only moral clarity, but a transformative path, illustrating that the true measure of civilization lies not in material achievement or fleeting power, but in the extent to which we honor, protect, and nurture the divine in one another, recognizing that the well-being of each life strengthens the whole and fulfills the timeless moral imperative of love and unity. In communities where fear, mistrust, and the lingering effects of oppression have long fueled cycles of violence, the path toward true strength and stability lies not in the display of force or the possession of weapons, but in the cultivation of reasoning, self-discipline, and a shared sense of responsibility that binds neighbors and families together. The allure of quick retribution or personal dominance may seem immediate and tangible, yet it fractures the very foundation upon which safe, thriving communities are built, perpetuating patterns of harm that echo across generations. By embracing the principles of thoughtful deliberation and ethical self-control, individuals learn to navigate conflicts not through aggression, but through dialogue and mutual understanding, transforming moments of tension into opportunities for growth, empathy, and reconciliation. Each choice to step away from impulsive retaliation and toward measured reflection strengthens the social fabric, creating an environment where people feel both protected and accountable, aware that their actions ripple through the lives of others and ultimately define the collective character of the community. Self-discipline extends beyond personal restraint. It becomes a cornerstone of leadership, mentorship, and moral example, shaping the ways in which men and women guide the next generation, instilling values of patience, respect, and integrity. Within this framework, violence is no longer a measure of strength but a failure of imagination, a missed opportunity to assert one's worth and protect others through wisdom rather than force. Communities flourish when individuals recognize that real power lies in the ability to think critically, act responsibly, and contribute positively to the lives of those around them, turning potential disputes into bridges of understanding rather than battlegrounds of resentment. By fostering collective responsibility, neighborhoods evolve into interdependent networks, where everyone from elders to youth shares a stake in safety, prosperity, and ethical conduct, and where each act of care and vigilance reinforces the resilience and unity of the whole. The transformation from conflict-driven existence to a society guided by reason and discipline is neither simple nor immediate, yet it is essential for lasting progress. Guns and violence, while superficially empowering, erode trust and perpetuate fear, leaving communities fragmented and vulnerable. Reasoning and self-discipline, in contrast, cultivate environments in which dialogue, accountability, and shared moral standards become the mechanisms through which disputes are resolved and relationships are strengthened. This shift requires courage, the courage to reject instinctive aggression, to value the lives and dignity of others, and to hold oneself accountable for the consequences of one's actions. It demands persistence, as each decision to approach conflict with thoughtfulness rather than impulse reinforces habits that shape the social and spiritual character of the community over time. As these principles take root, the results are profound and far-reaching. Children grow up witnessing models of patience and integrity. Neighbors develop mutual trust, and society at large begins to internalize the understanding that personal and communal well-being are inseparable. Communities once marred by cycles of retaliation can thrive, bound by fear but by mutual respect, ethical conduct, and the shared recognition that strength is measured not by the ability to dominate others, but by the capacity to reason, to exercise self-discipline, and to assume responsibility for the collective good. In this vision, the eradication of violence becomes not a distant ideal but a lived reality, and the cultivation of disciplined, compassionate, and morally conscious citizens ensures that the bonds of unity, resilience, and humanity endure across generations, creating a legacy in which communities are defined by care, wisdom, and enduring strength rather than conflict and fear. In a world where rules and regulations often dictate the limits of behavior, there exists a force far more potent than law, a force that transcends written codes and social mandates, shaping the very essence of human interaction: love. When love becomes the guiding principle in the hearts and minds of individuals, societal rules, while still important, begin to take a secondary role, because people are compelled not by fear of punishment but by a deep sense of empathy, care, and moral duty toward one another. Communities transform when people act from a place of genuine affection and respect. When neighbors see each other not as strangers or potential adversaries, but as extensions of their own humanity, deserving of understanding, protection, and consideration. In such an environment, cooperation flourishes organically, conflicts are resolved with compassion rather than rigid enforcement, and harmony becomes a lived experience rather than an imposed ideal. Love, in this sense, operates as an invisible thread weaving together the social fabric, fostering trust, loyalty, and a shared commitment to the welfare of others. Because the motivation to do good comes not from obligation but from an intrinsic desire to uphold the dignity and well-being of those around us. When individuals embrace love as a guiding principle, justice itself is redefined. It is no longer merely a system of external rules applied impartially. It becomes a living practice of fairness, kindness, and accountability rooted in the recognition of shared humanity. People learn to extend patience, forgiveness, and support to one another, anticipating needs, acknowledging struggles, and creating solutions that prioritize communal well-being. Love empowers individuals to act responsibly even when no one is watching, to prioritize the greater good over narrow self-interest, and to build bridges across differences that laws alone cannot reconcile. In this way, love acts as both compass and safeguard, steering behavior toward integrity, ethical choices, and proactive engagement with the challenges of society. Communities shaped by this principle find that the rigid frameworks of rules and regulations are no longer the primary agents of order. Instead, order emerges naturally from relationships grounded in trust, mutual respect, and shared commitment to one another as flourishing. The transformative power of love is particularly evident in the ways it nurtures the most vulnerable, protects the marginalized, and sustains social cohesion in the face of adversity. When people act out of love, they recognize that their actions affect not only themselves but the entire community, and that small gestures of care ripple outward, creating patterns of kindness and reciprocity that strengthen the bonds among neighbors, families, and institutions. This creates a society where cooperation is instinctive, where support replaces suspicion, and where individuals are guided less by external enforcement and more by internalized values rooted in empathy and understanding. Love dissolves barriers erected by prejudice, fear, or competition, allowing people to see one another as partners rather than opponents, collaborators rather than rivals. Over time, the consistent practice of love cultivates a culture in which moral awareness, ethical conduct, and mutual accountability are second nature, and where individuals collectively shape a society in which rules serve as supportive guides rather than the primary source of behavioral direction. In such a world, the presence of love ensures that communities are resilient, interconnected, and harmonious, not because of the fear of sanctions or the threat of punishment, but because the human heart has learned to value the well-being of others as an inseparable part of its own. Through this lens, love becomes the highest law, a transformative power capable of sustaining unity, fostering cooperation, and ensuring that the bonds between people endure, transcending mere compliance and giving rise to a society that truly thrives on compassion, respect, and shared humanity. As the story of a people unfolds, one of the most profound truths emerges. The path to genuine empowerment lies not in dependence on systems that have historically undermined them, but in the deliberate creation of structures that they themselves control, nurture, and sustain. Farrakhan envisions a future where Black communities are no longer beholden to external forces for their survival or prosperity, where the fruits of labor, creativity, and innovation remain within the community, circulating to build collective strength rather than being siphoned off by outside interests. He speaks passionately of Black-owned businesses, not as mere commercial enterprises, but as vital instruments for economic resilience, cultural affirmation, and communal pride. Every storefront, factory, or service established under this vision becomes a beacon of self-determination, a tangible manifestation of a people taking control of their destiny, asserting the value of their labor, and creating opportunities for the next generation to thrive without compromise. In Farrakhan's vision, schools and educational institutions take on a central role, not simply as places of instruction but as incubators of knowledge, character, and identity. They are spaces where children can learn the history and contributions of their ancestors, where they can cultivate skills relevant to both the present and the future, and where they can internalize the principles of responsibility, leadership, and ethical conduct that have been woven throughout the community's narrative. Education, paired with economic enterprise, forms a symbiotic foundation, informed minds guiding innovative ventures, and successful enterprises providing resources to strengthen learning environments. Farms and industries, too, are not abstract goals but practical necessities, ensuring that food, goods, and resources are produced and circulated within the community. Fostering sustainability, independence, and the capacity to weather external pressures. These enterprises become living classrooms, teaching stewardship, collaboration, and strategic thinking while simultaneously reinforcing economic sovereignty. Underlying this vision is the principle that true wealth is measured not merely in monetary terms, but in the capacity to make choices, to protect community interests, and to cultivate intergenerational stability. By building these institutions, individuals contribute to a collective ecosystem in which every member has a stake. Every contribution strengthens the whole, and success is shared and multiplied rather than concentrated in a few hands. The active creation of businesses, farms, schools, and industries becomes an act of liberation, a declaration that a people can rise through their own effort, ingenuity, and unity, defining their own narrative and shaping a future free from dependence, exploitation, or marginalization. Farrakhan emphasizes that this path requires vision, courage, and persistence. It demands collaboration, a commitment to ethical practice, and the cultivation of leadership within the community, so that every enterprise is not only economically viable but morally grounded, socially responsible, and culturally affirming. The impact of such an approach is profound. It nurtures confidence, reinforces identity, and instills a sense of purpose that extends far beyond individual achievement. In this ecosystem, wealth becomes a tool for education, health, empowerment, and cultural preservation. Independence becomes the bedrock of dignity, self-respect, and resilience. And self-sufficiency emerges as a testament to the enduring strength of a community that has chosen to define its own destiny, to invest in itself, and to ensure that future generations inherit not only the material means to thrive but the moral and cultural foundation to lead, create, and sustain a legacy of empowerment and unity. In Farrakhan's vision, education transcends the confines of traditional classrooms, transforming into a dynamic, lived experience that equips individuals with the tools to navigate and shape the world around them. He emphasizes that knowledge divorced from practice is incomplete, and that real empowerment arises when learning is intimately connected with tangible skills, applied understanding, and hands-on experience. From the moment a child steps into a community school, the lessons are designed not merely to impart facts or rote memorization, but to cultivate critical thinking, problem-solving, and the confidence to innovate within one's environment. The curriculum intertwines history, culture, and ethics with vocational and entrepreneurial training, ensuring that each student develops both intellectual acumen and practical competence. By engaging in apprenticeships and mentorship programs, young people witness firsthand the process of creating, managing, and sustaining enterprises, learning the nuances of trade, finance, leadership, and collaboration in contexts that mirror real-world challenges. Farrakhan asserts that this approach instills a sense of purpose and belonging, showing students that their labor and creativity have immediate value within the community, and that they are integral participants in the collective advancement of their people. Farms, workshops, and businesses within the community function as both educational laboratories and economic engines, offering experiential learning that teaches responsibility, accountability, and resilience. By participating in these ventures, young individuals gain a clear understanding of how individual effort contributes to collective prosperity, reinforcing the principles of cooperation, ethics, and civic responsibility that have been a consistent thread throughout the larger vision of community empowerment. The emphasis is on sustainability. Skills learned today become the foundation for enterprises tomorrow, creating a cycle in which knowledge, labor, and innovation continuously reinforce one another. This philosophy extends beyond technical instruction. It encompasses moral education and character development, reflecting the belief that true empowerment requires not only competence but integrity. As students navigate apprenticeships, they are encouraged to exercise judgment, cultivate empathy, and develop leadership qualities, understanding that their success is inseparable from the well-being of the community as a whole. Through this integrated model, practical skills are elevated into instruments of liberation, enabling individuals to participate fully in the creation of businesses, industries, schools, and farms that are controlled and nurtured by the community itself. The combination of experiential education and hands-on practice ensures that knowledge is not abstract but actionable, equipping each person with the capacity to adapt, innovate, and contribute meaningfully to communal growth. By fostering this environment, Farrakhan envisions a generation of leaders who are not only academically informed but strategically skilled, morally grounded, and deeply connected to their heritage. They emerge capable of sustaining enterprises, cultivating self-sufficiency, and mentoring others in turn, creating a cycle of empowerment that strengthens social cohesion, economic stability, and cultural continuity. Education becomes an engine of transformation. Apprenticeships a bridge between aspiration and achievement, and practical skills a toolkit for constructing a community that thrives independently, ethically, and collectively. In this way, learning is inseparable from action, knowledge from impact, and personal development from communal prosperity, forging a resilient society where empowerment is both an individual and shared journey, and where every member is equipped to contribute to a legacy of enduring growth. innovation, and unity. Farrakhan envisions a community where the boundaries imposed by religious labels dissolve into a shared commitment to collective progress. Understanding that the essence of faith lies not in titles or affiliations, but in the principles that guide human behavior and strengthen communal bonds. In his teachings, the focus shifts from sectarian divisions to the underlying values that unite people: compassion, integrity, service, and mutual respect. He illustrates how countless conflicts throughout history have been fueled not by true spiritual differences, but by the elevation of labels over lived ethics, by the insistence that one group's interpretation holds supremacy over another's lived experience. In response, he calls for a reorientation, urging individuals to see beyond outward designations and to recognize that the shared struggles, aspirations, and moral obligations of the community are far more consequential than the divisions that have historically separated them. Within this framework, religious diversity is reframed not as a source of friction, but as a reservoir of wisdom, a tapestry of perspectives that can strengthen the moral and intellectual fabric of society. Farrakhan emphasizes that every tradition contains teachings that, when applied with sincerity and humility, contribute to the cultivation of ethical individuals who act in the best interests of their families, neighborhoods, and broader communities. By prioritizing shared goals over sectarian loyalties, members are encouraged to collaborate on initiatives that enhance economic independence, educational empowerment, and cultural resilience. Understanding that the success of one sector of the community is intertwined with the well-being of all, the narrative of division is replaced by a vision of interdependence, where dialogue and cooperation create a network of support rather than a battleground for dominance. He also underscores the spiritual dimension of this approach, reminding the community that divine principles transcend human-imposed distinctions, and that the recognition of a common humanity guided by higher moral laws offers a unifying foundation. By internalizing this perspective, individuals develop a capacity to move past prejudice, suspicion, and territorialism, seeing the face of God or moral truth in every neighbor, regardless of ritual, denomination, or creed. In practice, this means cultivating spaces where collaboration is natural, where initiatives for education, business, and social welfare welcome participation across differing beliefs, and where leadership is evaluated not by doctrinal adherence, but by demonstrated commitment to communal upliftment and ethical conduct. Farrakhan's vision extends to everyday life, interactions on the streets, in schools, within marketplaces, and in local gatherings are guided by mutual respect, civility, and a shared commitment to justice and growth. The emphasis on unity over sectarianism fosters resilience, reducing conflicts that arise from miscommunication or mistrust, and creating a culture in which differences are acknowledged without being weaponized. Over time, this approach cultivates a community that is both spiritually rich and socially cohesive, where diversity in belief enriches rather than fragments collective action, and where cooperation replaces contention as the norm. By embracing the principle that the goals of the community outweigh the divisions imposed by labels, Farrakhan envisions a society in which each member feels valued and empowered to contribute meaningfully, secure in the knowledge that their efforts advance not only individual success but the shared welfare of all. In this environment, the focus shifts from debating doctrinal superiority to enacting tangible progress, transforming spiritual diversity into a catalyst for ethical leadership, cultural vitality, and sustainable community development, where mutual respect and shared purpose define the relationships that sustain the collective journey toward independence, self-sufficiency, and enduring unity. Farrakhan's message reaches its most personal and transformative point when he calls upon individuals to embrace a profound commitment to self-improvement. recognizing that the health of the community begins within each person. He frames this not as an abstract moral duty, but as an actionable path, urging men and women alike to examine their habits, their relationships, and the ways in which their daily choices impact both their own lives and the lives of those around them. In his teachings, self-improvement encompasses more than personal success or spiritual enlightenment. It is inseparable from responsibility, discipline, and the cultivation of character that reflects integrity, empathy, and accountability. Every action, from the words spoken to the decisions made, is understood as a contribution to the larger framework of collective upliftment, where the flourishing of the community is intimately tied to the growth of each member. To make this vision tangible, Farrakhan emphasizes the power of pledges, deliberate, conscious commitments that translate values into measurable behaviors. These pledges serve as both moral contracts with oneself and practical blueprints for action, encompassing goals such as mentoring youth, contributing to local businesses, or creating supportive networks that reinforce education, safety, and economic independence. By formalizing intentions into structured steps, individuals are encouraged to move beyond passive admiration of ideals into concrete practices that shape the reality of their neighborhoods, their families, and the broader community. He shares examples of ordinary men and women whose disciplined efforts, whether teaching a child to read, organizing cooperative businesses, or supporting a neighbor in need, have ripple effects that transform entire communities, illustrating how personal dedication magnifies collective outcomes in ways that cannot be achieved by abstract rhetoric alone. This philosophy also integrates spiritual consciousness, reminding participants that their self-improvement is not merely a civic obligation, but a reflection of divine responsibility, a manifestation of the God-given potential within each individual. In aligning personal development with community service, Farrakhan underscores that moral growth and social impact are inseparable. A man or woman who strengthens their character inherently strengthens the bonds of trust, respect, and cooperation that sustain communal life. The act of service, whether through mentorship, advocacy, or tangible support, becomes a spiritual exercise, a practice in embodying principles of justice, equity, and care, and a method of demonstrating that the health of society depends upon the integrity and action of its members. Farrakhan further illustrates that the accumulation of small, consistent actions compounds over time, creating systems of support and resilience that safeguard communities against the persistent challenges of inequality, neglect, and systemic marginalization. By committing to ongoing improvement and service, individuals become active architects of their destiny and the destiny of their people, turning intentions into real-world impact and inspiring others to follow suit. This culture of accountability and intentionality cultivates leadership, fortifies social cohesion, and generates sustainable pathways for economic and cultural advancement, reinforcing the principle that empowerment is both personal and collective, practical and aspirational. Ultimately, his call to action is an invitation to integrate character, responsibility, and service into the very rhythm of daily life, transforming ordinary citizens into agents of lasting change. The pledges taken and actions executed become the threads weaving a resilient, self-sufficient, and ethically grounded community, one in which progress is measured not only by individual achievements, but by the elevation of all members, and where the promise of a stronger, unified, and morally empowered society is realized through the deliberate, conscious, and continuous efforts of those committed to the path of self-improvement and collective upliftment. As we reach the conclusion of this journey through Farrakhan's teachings, it becomes clear that his vision is not merely a collection of ideas, but a holistic blueprint for transformation, one that intertwines spiritual depth, social responsibility, and economic empowerment into a cohesive path forward. At its Farrakhan emphasizes that true revival begins with love, the recognition of the divine spark within every person, the understanding that our shared humanity demands respect, empathy, and care. Love is not passive, it is active, shaping the way we engage with family, neighbors, and the broader community, guiding decisions and inspiring actions that foster harmony, understanding, and mutual support. Unity emerges as the second cornerstone, a principle that calls upon individuals to move beyond divisions of race, religion, and background to embrace a collective identity rooted in shared goals and common destiny. Through unity, communities gain the strength to confront systemic injustices, to build institutions that reflect their values, and to create spaces where every member can thrive. This solidarity does not dilute individuality but amplifies the potential of each person, reminding us that personal growth and communal strength are inseparably linked. Farrakhan's blueprint extends into the practical realm of self-determination, advocating for economic independence, education, and skill building as foundations for sustainable empowerment. He challenges communities to build their own businesses, schools, and farms, cultivating not only wealth but resilience, self-respect, and agency. Through apprenticeships, mentorship, and tangible pathways to opportunity, individuals can take ownership of their futures while simultaneously uplifting those around them. Economic empowerment, when combined with moral responsibility and communal care, becomes a force for lasting transformation, capable of breaking cycles of dependency and disenfranchisement. Yet perhaps most importantly, Farrakhan's message is rooted in action. The vision he presents is not theoretical. It is meant to be lived. Each pledge to self-improvement, each act of service, each effort to nurture the next generation contributes to a larger tapestry of renewal. By integrating spiritual awareness with practical strategies, by pairing love with accountability and unity with self-determination, communities are equipped to overcome the challenges of the present and lay the foundation for a brighter, more equitable future. Thank you for taking the time to engage with these ideas and explore this journey toward empowerment and collective upliftment. If this message resonated with you, please consider supporting the channel by hitting the like button, subscribing, and turning on notifications so you never miss a story that inspires reflection, growth, and action. Together, through knowledge, compassion, and dedication, we can embrace the principles of love, unity, and self-determination to build communities that are not only strong and self-sufficient but deeply connected, ethically grounded, and capable of shaping a future filled with hope, dignity, and opportunity for all.